Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast. This is episode number 4 with Kristen Abell, another fellow proud higher ed geek who works in sort of web management and development, but has been a good friend, colleague of mine for a few years. I interviewed her twice for the SAC podcast, so I'll link out to those 2 episodes if you want to check them out, as well as everything else that we talk about. A lot of cool stuff. She is a very strong mental health advocate, especially in the workplace, with just sort of working to erode and kind of get rid of the stigma, kind of bringing that part of ourselves into work, since it does impact our ability to do work if we are suffering from, anxiety or depression or anything like that. So she also runs the Committed Project. So definitely check that out. A great site with a lot of awesome resources. But yeah, really enjoyed this chat. Really fun stuff, and really appreciate all the great work that Kristen does and all the cool stuff that we talked about in this episode. So yeah, without further ado, this is episode number 4 with Kristen Abell. It's an honor to have our good friends at SwiftKick be a sponsor of the podcast, because I've seen their work firsthand, and it's truly unlike any student leadership training I've experienced. They've been voted Best Student Leadership Program unprecedented 5 times, so you know they must be doing something right. As a bonus for our listeners, SwiftKick is giving a $500 discount off their normal speaking fee if you mention Higher Ed Geek when you contact them. I highly recommend their trainings for your campus, as your students will be talking about it for months afterwards. It's really great stuff. Check them out, swiftkick.hq.com, to learn more, and let them know I sent you. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I can't remember when we had talked last, for the podcast and stuff, but I guess, has anything kind of big happened, anything cool that I guess is sort of noteworthy in your life, and then we'll kind of get into anything else, I guess, what's kind of been going on for you lately?
Sure. Noteworthy. Gosh. I think probably the biggest things that have been happening is as you know, I tend to have a lot of little side projects and stuff that I'm always working on. And so I've actually started doing, I do web development for my full-time job, but I've actually started doing web development freelancing. And so that's been kind of a fun venture for me, as well as I've still been speaking a lot about mental illness as through the Committed Project. And I got to do a webinar with the U.S. Office of Disability Employment Policy. Gosh, it's been a little over a month ago. And so we had 200 people at the webinar. It was super cool about mental illness in the higher ed workplace. So that's kind of my most exciting thing that has happened recently.
Yeah, that's very cool. So yeah, and I know that, it's just been it's just cool because I guess you kind of being known for that or sort of kind of cultivating that expertise, for lack of a better term, I guess, because I always feel very humble of I'm not an expert, but just you very much immersed yourself in it. It's at least that you're an advocate for it, I guess I'll say, it's you being at the table. It's just because it's the expert thing to me is well, I'm not somebody who's done psychology research for a decade or something. But yeah, I guess, how did that come about? Was it that you're just sort of in the ether, they knew of you, they approached you, and you sort of just jumped in for that, or kind of how did that come about?
They actually found me through Committed. And so they reached out to me in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we were actually doing a ton of stuff then, posting a bunch, sharing a bunch of Instagram posts that Sue Caulfield, who works with me on that, had drawn and created for us. So we were kind of really immersed in the mental health advocacy landscape during that month. It's hard. Probably the hardest thing for us there is that it's, for both of us, it is a side hustle, but it's an unpaid side hustle. And it's we have to get in touch with our mental illness while we're doing that. And so it's very draining. And so I'm always jealous when I see stuff like Mental Health America does stuff year round. I'm oh yeah, they all get paid to do that. This is just our, side passion project, really. And And so anyways, when we were doing that, they had reached out to me through the Committed website and emailed me and just said, hey, we've been following your story this month and would be curious if you'd come in and give that perspective to this webinar that we're doing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's part of, your journey and, something that you've really kind of taken up the mantle of, like I said, being an advocate for. So I guess, I'll definitely recommend people to, listen to the other episodes where you, one of them in particular, you really go into your journey and kind of, taking this unique path and everything to where you are today. But I guess if you want to give a quick recap or maybe just, look at your journey in a different way in terms of just like, kind of where you've been at your life when you've made like different decisions and stuff like that, just kind of give that introduction of who you are and the journey that you've been on so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I always kind of joke that I like recreate myself every few years. So it's been a little bit of a windy path. I actually have a degree in psychology, and then my master's is in social work. So I'm not your average higher ed person because I have a degree that's outside the field, which does make the committed work kind of interesting, by the way, but we'll come back to that. But anyways, while I was working on my master's, I actually worked in Res Life and got pretty ingrained in what I was doing there and really enjoyed it and started, even though when I graduated with my master's, I was really wanting to work at a women's center. I had all this experience in Res Life. And so I was like, I could work in Res Life for a while. I could work in a women's center. I ended up, I think my first job after graduation was actually with a TRIO program. That's a federally funded program. It's a grant program. And I was doing advising and not really counseling, but really talking with first generation low income students and then students with disabilities. And so we were, I was working with a variety of students. I was doing everything from, tutoring some of them, not really tutoring, but like just providing a second reader on their papers, to helping them enroll for classes, to helping them find financial support, to really just, if they had problems, making sure that they were getting counseling help if they needed it. But a lot of times I was the first person they would talk to. And then my partner is also in higher ed and works in Res Life, and he got a job at the University of Georgia. So we went down there, and I ended up working in Res Life there for a couple of years, really working with recruitment for RAs and then training and development, which is like also one of my like 5 million like geek areas that I could totally spend all day on. I got to like help develop their class that they had to take. And I was in charge of scheduling all of training. So like that whole, and we had like 200 RAs there. So it was no small venture. And then after that, I did finally end up in a women's center, working with sexual violence, advocacy, and support. And I did that for about 2 years, and then worked in another women's center more on the programming side of things and the administrative side of things, and then back into Res Life. And then after like 3 years in kind of a pretty high stress, it was a really high stress situation. I was like, I am miserable. I hate this. This is awful. I really like doing stuff on websites. Like, and that's what I would do. Like, that's what I would retreat to when I was having these like awful days. I'd be like, you know what? I'm just going to go close my door and play around on the website for a little bit. I can still count that as work, right? And so I was able to get a job at the same university, working with our student affairs websites, but also some larger website issues for the university, and learned on the job how to develop websites. And this is the longest I've ever been in one kind of role. I'm not in that exact same role. I'm actually now the web manager. So I used to joke that this role is the webmaster for the university, or the web mistress, because it's been women for the last two people who have been in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I oversee web at the university, and I love it. Like I don't, I don't know that I see myself doing anything extremely different at this point. Like I may do other things, but like I think I'm pretty much going to be here for the duration with, or at least be in web and higher ed web specifically for the duration, because it's really that's where I feel like my skill set and my interests have crossed. A lot of previous positions have either been skill set driven or interest driven, and I haven't had like both of those things come into play, which I think is what happens to a lot of people. Like they get really excited about something, but their skill set doesn't match, or they're really skilled in an area, but their interest isn't there. I've been really fortunate to find a place where both of those crossed. And then, of course, because it's not nearly as draining as being the director of residence life was for me. I am constantly doing stuff on the side. So I've done like the ACPA tech force. I did that for a year, or I do social media consulting. I did that for a year, where I actually like went out to universities and either consulted or spoke. And I do a lot of presentations on various things. And then, of course, more recently in the past like 3 years, I've started really talking about mental health. And it was because when I was in my previous job, I actually had a really, really, really bad episode of depression where I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. And in hindsight, maybe I probably should have, but I didn't. I made it through it. But it really felt like that was going to be the only option. It became apparent to me that when I tried to talk to my coworkers about it, they were not ready to talk to me about it. They were not able to be supportive because they just didn't know how to deal with that. Like they didn't know how to talk to somebody who they worked with that experienced mental illness. And that's when it was kind of like that became my passion project. I really hate using the word passion. I've used it like 3 times already. So sorry about that. But yeah, it became like this area where I was like, this is needed. And I can be the person to do this, and or I can be one of the people doing it. And so, and you know what? Like I joke about this a lot. Like now I'm 40 years old, and I'm like, I'm 40. What are they going to do to me? Like, like I'm a web developer. If I get fired, I'll go get a job someplace. Like I'm a web developer. So like, I feel like I have a privilege and a luxury to be able to be out about my mental illness. And to advocate for it in a way that people who are just starting out in their jobs, or even people who are very well established in their jobs, don't feel like they have that freedom to do that. So, hey, like if I have that freedom, I should use that to make a difference for others.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that idea of like you finding that place where it feels like a much more kind of like alignment, within you in terms of like what you do well and all that is like obviously what kind of like what I kind of the grander goal of this endeavor of like, celebrating people's enthusiasms and the things that they, enjoy that are parts of their life and all that. Cause I think that's kind of like the idea, like my optimistic self is that like, if only we could have more people who were enthusiastic about the work that they're doing and be good at that work too. Cause yeah, people get like pulled one way or the other where it's like, well, I can do that well, but I'm not necessarily enthusiastic about it. Or vice versa. And just like, just like me being somebody who just like, I love kind of geek culture and, cons and cosplay and just like, fandom in terms of like shows and stuff, like the just raw enthusiasm that, those kind of things can pull. It's the idea that certainly I'm sure like, you're not like, geeking out as hard as about web development as you might like something else that just kind of cultivates that a little bit more. It's just the idea though, that I think, for me, like podcasting or writing and those kind of things, like it certainly can be, because yeah, like passion project is like there's just not a good term because it's like side hustle, I think it's like overused or whatever. Just like
right.
I guess it's almost just like it's a hobby. I guess that also feels like not a good enough word, but just like because it's the book that I know a lot of people I know have read, and I reviewed it on the blog. The Real Artists Have Day Jobs, like doing something like committed where it would encourage some creativity or just anything like that. That doesn't have to pay the bills, and it's almost like it's better to kind of be like, okay, I have my day job and then do this other hobby as just kind of like a, a thing that kind of brings joy to my life and just cultivates a different skill set. But I'm still like out in the world and finding inspiration there to bring back into, whatever art or other projects that I, get into and stuff. And, yeah, I think there's a lot there, but you talked about a lot, and I enjoyed all of it because I think I'm early in my career, and I still feel like I'm searching for that kind of right fit of like the values and the skills and the interest and everything aligning. So and I think your story is one where it definitely took a while to get there, but it's all about the journey, and you probably like you said, in terms of just like your educational background, bringing into different things that you do now, or just like everything that happened kind of built you into the person that you are now, who is able to be like, I like that, I like higher ed, but I don't want to work in res life, but I love web development. And I found this thing, like you kind of had to, try a couple things on before you found the thing that was just like, a really good fit.
Right. And had I not done the work in res life that I did, like had I not brought the skill set there, like I wouldn't have built the relationships on campus that allowed me to take a job where I wasn't really fully qualified at the beginning, but was able to learn on the job because people knew that I would learn, right? Like because I had that history there. And I think like people don't always get that there, you don't always get to go straight to what you want to do because there's some skill building still that you have to do. But if you build relationships with people and trust, sometimes you get opportunities to do those sorts of things.
Yeah. I think, there's the part of like, because I can get impatient, and there's certainly the part of like paying your dues, but I think also it's like you have to define the thing that you are most interested in. And I think sometimes it's like, I feel like, oh man, I wasted time or something, but it's like, no, you have to look at it. Yeah. Like you're building connections and experience and knowledge and everything that's if you just look at it the right way, can still serve you going forward. So
right.
Yeah, and I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, like, I think part of, and you kind of started to allude to this, I think, like like I said, web development and web management is where my interests and skills align. But like, if I had to do that, 24 hours a day, I would be bored. Right. So it's a job that leaves me enough emotional capacity to do those other things that also fill me. And so it's the perfect mix for me that I do have something that, it's interesting and I enjoy it, but I also then can go home at the end of the day and cross stitch and read and write and do all these other things that I also find fun because I have the emotional energy at the end of the day to do that.
Yeah. Well, I guess, and that segues well of just like, you've talked a lot about your journey and your work and what you enjoy about it. So, you have that capacity to do other things. So like, and I think certainly the mental health awareness and advocacy is certainly something that you could say that you kind of like geek out about, and you could go that way if you want. But I guess anything else like writing or cross stitching or anything like that, I guess just like anything that you're kind of geeking out about currently, and like, have you always been into it? How did you get into it? Kind of give that that framework of the things that you're currently kind of just geeking out about.
Sure. Well, yes. Okay. So I do geek out a little bit about cross stitch. You've probably by now, most people who are listening, I've probably seen a lot of the subversive cross stitch that's out there. Mm-hmm. And that's been really actually kind of cool to see. I've cross stitched since I was like 9 years old because I was this dorky kid apparently, but I've always kind of done it and done a lot of patterns. But this is one of the things I actually used to develop my own patterns every once in a while. It's one of those things that, and it goes very well with like the web development. Like I am really creative, but I like pattern. Like I like structure to my creativity. Uh-huh. So being able to draw a pattern in a grid format is like about as structured creatively as you can get. And so that actually works out really well for me. So I do a lot of different things like people, like I have little people cross stitches that I do. And I actually I've actually patterned out. I haven't started stitching it because it's going to be massive, but a Buffy the Vampire Slayer alphabet.
Oh.
So I'm really excited about that. It's super geeky, like I said, but it's going to be huge. So it has like all the different characters that go with all the different letters.
Yeah.
There's a couple of those that were super hard and are very obscure references, but anyways, I managed. I found all of them. But anyways, so yeah, I like doing that sort of stuff. I also read a ton, like a ton, probably 1 to 2 books a week.
Wow.
And that is probably where I indulge my geeking out the most. So lately, I have been reading books about like how to make better presentations or slide decks. I've also read a lot about this year actually, I should say, like it's been most of the year. I've been really trying hard to read books by authors from different backgrounds and cultures than me. And so like I actually have a list of like women authors who are all from different backgrounds and countries and cultures. And, you know, there's like LGBT, there's people who are different religions, all sorts of different stuff. So I've been kind of like steadily making my way through that and just kind of learning about different cultures and things like that. That's always really important to me. A lot of the social justice stuff I've been reading about. I like anything I can get my hands on, I pretty much read. But I also, when in my moments like recently where I was kind of like brain fried, just between work and everything else, the world, young adult fiction. I love young adult fiction. It's so great.
Yeah.
Super good reads there.
Yeah. Well, and I'm quite impressed because like it takes me a lot just to like get through one book, and that you can like just crush a couple in a week. Like that's just like expert level. Like because I think it's just hard for me to focus, I guess, on a book. I just get bored after like a chapter, and I just kind of you do like bite-sized chunks of it over like a long period of time.
So there's a part of the reason that I read as much as I do. I mean, like part of the reason that I can read that is because there's a lot of my time that I spend reading. Like I spend usually at least an hour at lunch every day reading. And then, you know, at night, maybe an hour to 2 hours reading. And I don't watch that much TV. I watch the occasional TV, especially when I'm actually stitching. I watch TV while I do that. So, that does take away from my reading time. During those times, I don't read as much, but, part of the reason that I do it is it helps with my anxiety, because it allows me to get out of my own head, for a little bit. So like, especially fiction, or even biographies, really, they allow me to like go be in somebody else's head for a little bit. And it's just enough that I can then go back to work in the afternoon and actually be refreshed. Whereas when I sit by myself and dwell, or even talking to people, and we tend to like vent about work or whatever, like I'm still like dwelling on stuff and my head's still cycling. And people with anxiety probably would recognize this description very well, what I'm talking about, where your brain just starts to cycle on the same things over and over and over again. And reading for me breaks that cycle. And when I'm not reading, I tend to have much higher anxiety and more anxiety attacks, actually. So it's kind of my own self-medicating for that.
That's an interesting thing that you just know about yourself, though. Like, and sure, you probably have just maybe like subconsciously utilize that as a strategy, but now just having the self-awareness, it's like, because I can imagine like if you go out of town for like a week and you forgot all your books or something, it'd be like now you have the self-awareness, like, you know, to make sure that you do it, because like if you don't, you're probably gonna be like, man, why do I feel so anxious? Like it's just like, oh, because
I'd go to the bookstore if I left all my books.
If you're getting anxious, it's like I need to go get a book. I forgot, which you probably have no problem finding them, but yeah, it's just like it'd be one of those things. Like for anybody, whatever their like tool is, if they don't have the awareness to know that it's something that helps them, and it's obviously like you don't have to like medicate yourself, which I'm sure works for some people, but I'm sure for other people it's just like you'd want to avoid that at all costs, because it's going to have its pros and cons, and the cost associated with it, whatever. But books, it's like you're learning, you're growing, it can be fun, and just like a way, like you said, just to like learn so much about people from different backgrounds than yours, which I know a lot of people have been purposely doing lately, which is
right.
And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the exact connection of just like that simple behavior and how it's kind of positively contributing to your life of just like, you know, allowing you to get out of your head for a little bit. Cause yeah, like I, on my breaks, usually listen to, like NPR One, they'll do the little clips of like the news or something, or, you know, just things that are going on, or listen to a podcast. And it just like, a lot of times that's, moments where I'll find inspiration or just ideas and just like kind of thought provoking things, especially with podcasts. It's always like, you know, those sort of just positive random question of just like, why is this thing the way that it is? And I'll just be like, yeah, I don't know. Like I want to figure it out. Right. And I'll listen to this like 20-minute episode. Yeah, I think that's where I kind of get that. Cause I feel like it's like, I would just need to like speed read or something, because like I'll listen to podcasts, because this is something that, Tom Kriegelstein, like he like will listen to podcasts at like 1.5 speed, and I started to do that, and it's like funny because if I listen to the episodes on like normal speed, I'm like, why does it sound like it's in like slow motion? But it's just that idea, like just kind of like, especially just if I don't have a lot of time, it's like, okay, I want to get through this like 50-minute episode in my 30-minute lunch break. I'm going to listen to it really quickly, and you know, I'll still kind of get the point kind of thing.
Right.
Because sometimes
that's interesting. I haven't done that. Podcast is another area that probably only in the last year that I've really like spent a lot of time listening to different ones. And I have like, I don't know how people listen to these all, like, you know, everybody's always giving me like 10 billion recommendations. I'm like, I'm still trying to make it through my other ones because, and I think this is, again, I think people who read books maybe do this, but like, I have a need to like go from beginning to end. Like, it's really hard for me to skip around. And so like, but with podcasts, you do like, you could skip around, you find the episode that you're particularly interested in or whatever. You don't necessarily have to listen to all of them beginning to end, unless it's something like Serial, or one of those, which I do like those because those are like reading a book or like listening to an audiobook kind of as well. But yeah, like I have a bajillion and one that I still need to listen to, you know, like that are on my list to listen to, but I have my favorites that I listen to like every week, and I make sure that I listen to those. And then I have other ones that I just, whenever I have time, I fill in.
Yeah. Man, that's why I like them, I think, is that they're just like bite-sized morsels, and you can just, you know, skip around if you want. It's, like I usually listen to more like just kind of episodic ones versus the serialized. But yeah, and I guess anything else with like, because I guess I have to give a shout out just, you know, in my pure geeky fashion, because I know you're a big Wonder Woman fan too.
I am.
So I guess just anything with, I mean, Wonder Woman, or you mentioned like books and kind of what it contributes to your life. Anything like with cross stitch and just like specifically like what that has kind of positively contributed to your life, in terms of just like, it's more like a recent discovery in what it means to you, or just I guess a cross stitch you said you've done for a long time, and I guess I don't know how long you've kind of been you know, a big fan of Wonder Woman, but I know you've with the movie coming out recently, like I remember seeing it, just like you're very kind of supportive and enthusiastic about that. But I guess
and then I went to it like 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's a great movie.
It was really well done. I was really pleased with it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. So this is kind of my, I guess, secret. It's not really very secret because I tell people this all the time, but like one of the things that I think is really cool about geeking out about stuff like Wonder Woman or cross stitch is that like people know me for that, right? Like, so I get people who, even though I'm an introvert, right? And so like when I'm in the office, I have my headphones in, I'm doing my work, whatever. It's not that I don't ever talk to people, but I really need a lot of alone time to get my work done. Because I have those interests, like people always feel like there's something they can talk to me about in some way, and something that they know about me. And so it helps to build relationships, I think, you know, because they're like, oh, I saw this cross stitch thing and I thought of you, or, oh, I saw this Wonder Woman thing and I thought of you. And it's funny because like probably 80% of my Wonder Woman collection is stuff that other people bought for me. I had like almost nothing when I started, and then people just like, I would always be like, oh, I love Wonder Woman, whatever. And people just started buying me stuff. I have some really cool things, like stuff that I never would have found for myself. And I certainly couldn't afford to have purchased for myself. And so that's kind of the joy of it, is that like it brings people, I think, closer to me. And it's not that they're not seeing a core part of me. I mean, the reason that I love Wonder Woman is she's this very strong female character. And some would argue the strongest of the superheroes, but I won't get into that. And my coworker is a Batman fan, so it we have these conversations occasionally. But anyways, like it just it's a way for people to know like a little bit about me. Oh, she likes Wonder Woman. Like okay, obviously she's probably not obviously, but maybe she's also interested in women's issues, and she's interested in advocating for women and those sorts of things. Like those are all true of me. As well. And I think it, or even like the cross stitch. Okay. Like she like is into like crafty work and she likes to work with her hands and, those sorts of things. And it's not just that I like those things in a vacuum. It's that they're actually glimpses into a bigger part of me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely because like my little like, desk at my office, like, yeah, and I mean, I did a whole like blog series, but I know you already you contributed to that too. Just like because that's one thing. Like you can have this physical representation where it can kind of work to help build more authentic connections. People know what you're into, and it's kind of like a bridge in. I think that's easily like a positive way that like the interest can, kind of add to your life where people just kind of know you for things. Because it's like the same thing for me is that like I've been into Star Wars for most of my life. And I always get those like sort of things as gifts sometimes. So it's just like, I'm like, I mean, I love Star Wars. Like I have enough random stuff. Like I don't need like some other thing, but it's like certainly appreciated because people, I guess it's, more helpful for them to know like, oh, he loves he loves that thing. I'm going to, get, that. But yeah, that's great. Yeah. And I think that like a character like Wonder Woman, has so much other like kind of layers that, people can kind of connect with and stuff. So.
Absolutely. And plus, like, because I decorate my cube, I have the most interesting screen when I do video conference calls. Mm-hmm. So obviously very important stuff. But people are always like, whoa, what is going on behind you there? And I'm like, oh, I got Wonder Woman over here. I got Buffy over here. Like,
yeah, that's what because the way that mine's set up, it's like what I'm looking at, which is, I mean, it's nice in its own way. Like everything's decorated, but like behind me is just like the rest of the floor. But, the
last time my husband stopped by my cube, he was like, I think you have enough now. And I'm like, oh, there's no such thing.
So you're like swap out stuff like, oh, this thing's been here for a while. I want to put the new thing. And then,
I can move this around. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess, anything, that you want to give, kind of a tip of the hat to, you mentioned, a lot of stuff that you read, and then, just some things kind of classically or throwbacks that you're into like Buffy, but just anything that you're reading, watching, listening to that you'd want to share out just as things that you're into.
Sure.
Right now.
So I mentioned like I have a couple of podcasts that I really, really like to listen to regularly. The Hilarious World of Depression is freaking amazing. It's John Moe, who's a comedian, and he interviews other comedians and celebrities who experience mostly depression, but also other mental illnesses. And I love it because I have always been somebody who's like been found humor to be really important. And lately, as I've been talking about mental illness and advocating for it, I've lost some of that humor because I'm trying to be sensitive to so many people and their concerns. And it was really a really good way for me to reintroduce that into how I think about my own experiences with mental illness. So it's fantastic. He just did one with John Green, who writes a lot of young adult books like The Fault in Our Stars. And it was amazing. Like I was in a funk and I would listen to it and I'm like, oh, this makes me feel so much better because I know I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Hey, this person who's like so super successful still experiences bouts of this and still does stupid stuff, like goes off his medication. I'm like, okay, that makes me feel a little better about myself. Okay. So yeah, that's one that I love. I really adore that. There's also, and I swear not all my stuff is about mental health, but a lot of it has been lately. But there's a TV show called You're the Worst.
Yeah.
And one of the main characters experiences depression, and it is easily the most accurate portrayal of depression I've ever seen in film. or on TV. And so it was like so great. And then this whole, like, she has a conversation with her boyfriend and is like, you can't fix this. You can't fix me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times have we had that conversation? And my husband, of course, totally gets that now, but like it took us a long time to get there and to get that understanding. And it was really good. So I really enjoy that show as well. And I haven't seen it yet. I'm in a little lax on this. I should have gone and seen it last weekend, but there's a new movie out. I think it's Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, which is about, of course, the creator of Wonder Woman, who, and I've read, there's a book all about him and the how Wonder Woman came about. And there was actually, and I suspect that this is somewhat similar. There was a play that a local theater here did that was also about that was really interesting. And so he's got a fascinating backstory as well. And it's also just, it's interesting to me that the most powerful, superhero, this woman was created by a man, but a man who was extremely feminist and had very feminist ideals in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's on my to-do list, I guess, still. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Well, that's another good segue of just like something that you're looking forward to, because we'll kind of get to that movie, which does look interesting. Because I think it's even like obviously like any movie adaptation or just sort of like trying to like make someone's life into like a 2-hour movie. Like I think that the movie takes some liberties, but I think the spirit of it is really important. And I'm not sure if they it could have gone any way of just depending on how the Wonder Woman like movie was received, but it's cool to kind of get this behind the scenes now, like a little bit after the movie was released. But yeah, so there's that you're kind of having kind of on your to-do list. Like anything else just in your job and life, the world, just if it's a book, movie, show, podcast, or whatever, just anything, or like a conference or something that you're going to, just anything that you are looking forward to in the near future, just as a little positive note to end on here.
So this is just, I guess, I don't know if I'm looking forward to this or not, but I won't be able to let my son listen to this because I'm going to tell you what his Christmas present's going to be, even though it's October. So my son has been asking for a cat for the last year, and my husband and I are strictly dog people. But we're going to get him a cat for Christmas. And I am both extremely nervous and kind of excited to see how he does with it, because he's like he's really in animals. He did a camp this summer. He's 11 years old, and he did a camp this summer at a pet shelter. They did like a 1-week camp, and he is just super into like helping animals and wants to be a vet when he gets older. And during the times when he doesn't want to be a YouTube star, of course. So I'm kind of excited about that, but I'm not really a cat person, but I think it'll be fun. I think we'll see. Either that or it's going to be like the worst idea we ever had.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. And then the only other thing, like because like I said, my son is very fascinated. Like I don't know an 11-year-old that doesn't want to be a YouTube star right now. But I really try to foster that, which I know a lot of parents are like, whatever, you don't need to mess with that. So I bought him a game capture system, and we're going to be setting up some stuff so that he can actually record. And so I've been learning about video and like how to do editing and different things like that, so that I can help him. And so that's kind of a cool thing that I've kind of started to dig into, but still have a lot more to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm excited about.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe he can be a animal focused YouTube star, just kind of merge
everything
together, yeah.
He could have like a whole like series about his cat. That should be right. That would be awesome.
Maybe, maybe it's more comedic, or maybe, it's just like chronicles of a, cat or whatever. But yeah, I think that's exciting just in the sense of like, 'cause I think that's something that throughout this episode, and it's a nice kind of point to end on, is like, you've talked a lot about your journey and your interest in all that, but obviously like you have a child and that's a huge part of your life. And then like you're able to do things with your son to learn and grow yourself, but then build that bond with him and just like, further his development and kind of foster his interest. Cause it's like, I remember like going through phases and stuff like, and things that never in the end amounted to anything, but I think it would help, cause like I played like Pee-wee sports and stuff and all that. It's like, I'm like so anti-sports now. Like I'm not athletic. I just don't really get into it, but like that was a social outlet for me, providing some physical activity. And it's like, I was into it at the time. And like, the idea of like, I'm not a parent, but like the idea that you might have this like archetype that you think your kid is going to be. And if, like a lot of parents now, it's like, oh, my kid wants to be social media famous. And you're like, you will never do that. It's like, like, they will probably find a way. Like they're going to like, go with their friends who is, has a camera or whatever, or like, so they just do it on their phones if they have a phone, like they do whatever. But,
well, and I can't tell you right now, like when I look at jobs, like so many jobs want video experience or knowledge. And I'm like, I don't care if he becomes a YouTube star or not. If he gets to figure out how to edit videos and stuff out of that, like immediately, like he's already got more experience than a ton of people out there. Why is that a bad thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's because something like I got into in high school is like video and audio. And it's like one of those things that there's like an initial, very much like a learning curve and something that you have to get over. But then like just having the basic skills, like once you get to a certain point, a lot of it becomes very intuitive. All the software is very similar and stuff. So it's like, if you can just foster even just a kind of basic comfort level with the kind of video editing interfaces and stuff. And I guess, I don't know because maybe I misheard you, but like if there's like, stuff with like video game streaming, if it's capturing that, I mean, like that's because I've gotten into that more with like a particular video game that I'm into. There's a huge like Twitch streaming community and stuff. And like, that's just something that
I'd
so
never
many people
heard
do
of
on the
Twitch
side.
until recently. And I'm like, what the heck's Twitch? And so then he's having to tell me all about it. I'm like, okay, well, cool.
Yeah.
Now I got to check it. Now I got to learn about that. And I think it's something that, and maybe this is a geek mindset, I don't know, but like when somebody tells me about something new, it's not just like, okay, that's cool, you go do your thing. It's like, ooh, I need to learn about that. Like I need to find out more about that and understand it. And so that's just kind of how I approach pretty much everything. And so my husband always laughs because he can tell whatever somebody's mentioned to me recently by whatever books are sitting on my nightstand. Because it's like, oh, okay, so we're learning about that this week. Okay.
Yeah. But I think that's definitely like spot on. And another thing that I would hope to like, in my mind, if there's something that we would want to kind of sort of inspire in people is that like, because for lack of a better term, the geeky tendency of just being curious, enjoying learning and seeking out knowledge, because I think whether it's, politics and just like a policy issue or learning about Twitch, and that's like a whole sect of the like streaming and video kind of content, kind of industry now, because like Amazon owns it and they're just like building out this entire roster of streamers. A lot of people that just do it on the side. Some people do it professionally. There's the whole video game like competition and tournaments and stuff that go through like streaming and all that. So it's just like, that's a whole thing that somebody can learn about, but there's obviously just so much that we can learn about in the world. So just making sure we stay curious, stay sort of thoughtful, and just kind of learning more about everything that's out there. So, and that is a beautiful place to end. I will not try to tarnish that in any way. Really appreciate your time here, Kristen. And this will post in the near future because I'm just kind of building out the rest of the episodes for this year. But it'll be out soon, and I'm excited for it to get out. And I appreciate your time and some really good stuff here. And we'll have everything that we talked about here in the show notes. So
awesome. Let me know if you need me to send you anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Any links or anything like that. So thanks for doing it. I love talking to you about this stuff.
All good stuff. And just have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.